Hi guys, it's me, the Big B, and it's time for another video. And I think, as you can see by the screen, this is going to be something a little bit different. It's definitely not one of my paranormal videos, that's for sure, which I will still be doing, but this is just something I wanted to do, just to lighten things up a bit, something I've always sort of wanted to do, but a little bit different to what everyone else is doing. Now, I've always liked watching the likes of Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, Markiplier, doing their gameplay videos. They're quite entertaining, these guys are really good at what they do. But I didn't want to go down that exact route. Two reasons for that. One, my poor little PC isn't up to that sort of gameplay at the minute. It's an Intel i5, but it's only onboard graphics. I haven't get it upgraded yet. And two is because there's already plenty of those type of videos out there. These guys, like I say, they're doing a fantastic job, and there's loads of these types of videos. What I want to do is kind of go back to the beginning. The very core of gameplay, well before SNES, Sega, anything like that, right back to the beginning. And I think some of you may be able to tell just by the date and the copyright year and the name of the game. Copyright 1983, Jetpack. Classic Spectrum game. Now, we did have home computers before the Spectrum. We had the ZX80, ZX81, they were the very first, but I didn't want to really do gameplay footage on any of them, even through the emulators, because the games are kind of like boring to watch for a start, because the ZX81 didn't have any colour, it didn't have any graphics as such, it just had black and white or grey blocks, and anything else was made up of just alphabetical characters. You know, like a H was representative of a car driving up a screen, you get the idea. So I didn't want to kind of go back that far. I wanted to settle on something which I remember, which was more mainstream for me at the time, which was the Spectrum. The mighty Spectrum. Any of you viewers, young viewers who don't know what a Spectrum is, I'll put a picture up in the top corner here. And basically that was our computers. That was our PlayStation 4. That was our Xbox One. And it was basically the entire thing, rubber keyboard, everything was self-contained. You plugged that into your TV. There were no monitors back then. It was basically straight into your TV, and boom, our minds were blown. We were absolutely not prepared for what we got. This thing had 16K of memory, a whole 16K. To put that into perspective, your average TV remote control probably has more processing power and more memory than the Spectrum had, literally. You had, at this point, from coming from the ZX81, you had actual sprites, graphics, kind of, which you'll see in a second. You had sound, a little tiny inbuilt speaker, a little bit like the PC speaker inside your PC when your BIOS boots and you get that beep. It was basically, that. And it could play different tones, and that was your music and your sound effects. Like I said, you could have 8 colours, but not each individual pixel could be a different colour. It had to be a block of colour. It just wasn't that advanced yet. But basically, that was it. And that blew our minds. Sound, graphics, colour. It was mind-blowing. And then, to get the damn game in there, there was none of this downloading it offline, because there wasn't any internet. I know that's hard to believe, but we had no internet back then. Basically, we had to load them off a cassette tape. Now, crazy as that sounds, there are some people out there who do not know what a cassette tape is, some of the younger viewers. So again, I'll put a picture up and show you what a cassette tape looks like. And this was the magnetic age. You living in the digital age where everything comes on DVDs and Blu-rays and memory sticks and downloadable. We had the magnetic age. Our games were stored as screeching sound, which you've heard in my intro, them bars and that screechy sound at the beginning. That was what it sounded like. And you had to sit and wait anywhere up to a few minutes to 7 minutes of listening to that before your game, like Jetpack we have here, would be loaded. And you had no choice, you had to wait. There was no fast track around it. And that was how it all started. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to show you guys how we misspent a lot of our youth, and how we had to use a little thing called imagination, because all the fancy graphics, all the 3D explosions, everything that's fed to you now Doesn't leave anything to the imagination. When you see these graphics, we had to have imagination. So I'm going to jump into it. We're going to set this going. Jetpack. Very simple premise. I'll talk you through it as I'm going. So basically we have three parts of a spaceship that we've got to put together. We have a little spaceman at the bottom who we can use his jetpack, hence the name of the game, and pick them up and drop them in. But as you can see, the graphics are insanely basic. Three platforms, a little jetman in white, and the sprites. And he can fire his little laser with his awesome laser sound. And basically you put the rocket together, you stay alive by dodging the little nasties and shooting them. And then you pick the fuel up to fuel your rocket up, and then you get the hell off the planet. You do this over about 4 levels, and each level, the nasties change. They change pattern, they change shape, they do, different sprites, gives you a different challenge, and eventually, if you live long enough, you get a different rocket. But that's it. This is the whole game. This is it. There's no background. Well, I suppose they use poetic license because it's supposed to be in space, so black background, but back then, the little old Spectrum couldn't do fancy backgrounds. It only had 8 colours, and like I said, each pixel couldn't be even a different colour. Right, we've refueled the rocket. While I'm gibbering on, we'll get down to this, and then get off the planet. Oh, that sound through my headphones, that is loud. But again, that's the sound we had. And just that sound that it had red flames coming out the bottom and it made this sound, it was mind-blowing. So basically, round 2, get the fuel because your rocket's already built, and as you can see, the nasties have changed. We've now got these little hairy dudes that are bouncing around all over the damn place, and they are much harder to hit. But again, it's the same principle: collect the fuel, get off the planet, and survive. But as you can see, we had to use our imagination. You had to use the imagination that you were in space, that you were this little space dude, and you fighting these bollocks. You fighting these aliens to stay alive. It was like, it was just mind blowing. When I first came from the ZX81 with its no colour, no graphics, no sound, very basic, to this was my PlayStation 3 upgrading to PlayStation 4 for my day. This was state of the art. This was as good as it got. They did bring other home computers out slightly after this, and around about this time, the Commodore 64 was one, which had slightly better sound, it had definitely better graphics, it had much better sound actually, and it could have sprites that were, each pixel was a different colour. It was a bit more advanced than the Spectrum, but it still wasn't the same. The Spectrum just held a kind of place in your heart. It's simple. The simplicity of it was what made it what it was. And the fact is, what I used to like about these home computers at the time, you could program them very easily. They had a programming language called BASIC, and yes, I know you can program for PCs and that nowadays and consoles, but it ain't easy. This was a simple programming language that would allow you to write your own games, which I did. I actually wrote my own game. I actually wrote several games, but the main one, the very first one, was a horse race and betting game where you had the odds and you had to bet money, and you actually got to see the last furlong of the race. The horses used to gallop along. It used to play music while they went. And we actually did that ourselves. We programmed that ourselves, just sitting in our bedroom. It was an awesome time. Where now to write anything, you need PhD in friggin' physics and God knows what else, and the programming languages are much, much more complex now. Everything's a lot more complex. Back then it was, you could write a game, send it into a magazine to be published, and you could do that from your own bedroom with relative ease. You had kids writing games back then. What I'm going to do here, guys, get to the next, try and stay alive long enough to get to the next rocket, because I don't want to make these too long and boring and just listening to me waffle on. It's just a bit of nostalgia for any of you guys and girls that are old enough to remember this stuff, and a little glimpse for the guys and girls who aren't old enough, who have not got a clue what any of this sort of stuff is, that this is how it started. This is how game started, this was the pioneering of the game age of gaming. This is how it started. This is how it was revolutionized. And it is still quite impressive of how quickly it evolved, it progressed from games like this to what you guys are playing now, even from this to the SNES and Super Mario, how things progressed so quickly. I don't even know what I did there. I just stood and looked at that guy and then kill us. Now I think the next stage is the new rocket. I'm fairly sure of it. Now there was a follow-up to this game brought out called Lunar Jetman, which put you on the surface of a planet walking around, and I remember there's a teleporter you could use, and you had a big, basically, space rover you could get in that had a gun on the back to help shoot some of these damn nasties, as well as you could jump out of that and fly around like this, which I will, I'll maybe do that one next, considering I've played this, and show you how they progressed and upgraded the game. There you go, there's the next rocket, guys, I was right, and it's kind of like a space shuttle, and now we've got proper little UFOs flying around annoying the shit out of us. So basically, it's just rinse and repeat. Again, still died. The gameplay mechanics were fairly easy. Get through a few levels, stay alive long enough, build the rocket, refuel it, get the hell out of there, and I still don't know what I did there. See, these games may be simple, guys, but God, they're still challenging. I'm not even going to get to refuel this. But basically, as I was saying before I started dying a lot, that this is basically the gameplay. Refuel the rocket, build the rocket, when you get a new rocket, refuel the rocket, rinse and repeat, the way you go. But it's all we had. This in itself was magical. We just kept playing and playing. We wanted to see what the next rocket was. We wanted to see what the next enemies were. And we just wanted to keep going. Even though the gameplay, to now, oh dear, game over, that was embarrassing. Even though the gameplay by nowadays standards is very basic, and what you lot would, some kids would consider amazingly boring. I always remember my son when I first showed him, because he grew up in this PlayStation 3s and 4 era, I showed him a Spectrum game, and he just looked with amazement, and his only words that he could come up with were, "What's this? How did you play this? How?" And that's all he kept saying. He kept, "How? But how? There's nothing there. It's crap." But it's crap from his perspective to what he's used to now. For us, this was life-changing stuff. It was mind-blowing. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I don't want to make these too long. It's just a little, like a little side thing. And I will do Lunar Jetman next. And we've got classics like Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, Jumpin' Jack Flash. There was some old classics that I remember, and I'm sure you guys remember. I'm going to have a bit play of those, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll have a little bit of a nostalgic time together, guys. So thanks for watching, and we shall catch you next time.